A reading from the book of Genesis. Genesis chapter 46, verses 1 through 7. Israel set out with all that was his. When he arrived at Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. There, God, speaking to Israel in a vision by night, called, "Jacob, Jacob." "Here I am," he answered. Then he said, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you a great nation. Not only will I go down to Egypt with you, I will also bring you back here after Joseph has closed your eyes." So Jacob departed from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel put their father and their wives and children on the wagons that Pharaoh had sent for his transport. They took with them their livestock and the possessions they had acquired in the land of Canaan. Thus Jacob and all his descendants migrated to Egypt, his sons and his grandsons, his daughters and his granddaughters, all his descendants. He took with him to Egypt Jacob's people who migrated to Egypt. His direct descendants, not counting the wives of Jacob's sons, numbered 66 persons in all. Together with Joseph's sons, who were born to him in Egypt, 2 persons. All the people comprising Jacob's family who had come to Egypt amounted to 70 persons in all. Israel had sent Judah ahead to Joseph so that he might meet him in Goshen. On his arrival in the region of Goshen, Joseph hitched the horses to his chariot and rode to meet his father Israel in Goshen. As soon as he saw him, he flung himself on his neck and wept a long time in his arms. And Israel said to Joseph, "At last I can die, now that I have seen for myself that Joseph is still alive." Joseph then said to his brothers and his father's household, "I will go and inform Pharaoh, telling him, 'My brothers and my father's household, whose home is in the land of Canaan, have come to me. The men are shepherds, having long been keepers of livestock, and they have brought with them their flocks and herds, as well as everything else they own. So when Pharaoh summons you and asks you what your occupation is, you must answer, "We, your servants, like our ancestors, have been keepers of livestock from the beginning until now, in order that you may stay in the region of Goshen, since all shepherds are abhorrent to the Egyptians." Here we see Israel, or Jacob, the son of Isaac, the son of Abraham, and how he goes into Egypt to see his son Joseph, who he thought had been dead for many years. Rather than finding out that his son was dead, rather than finding merely a corpse, he sees his son alive with 2 sons of his own. And what we're going to see is that there's a very special blessing that Jacob, or Israel, gives to the 2 sons of Joseph. He will make his grandsons equivalent to his sons. He will give them a blessing so that they are counted among the number of his sons. This would be a great honor, a great blessing, a great act of favoritism on the part of the father for those grandsons, that they would get an equal part, a double part of the inheritance, because each one of them would get a full inheritance rather than the inheritance of a grandchild. But we see Joseph, that he has a plan to keep his family apart from the Egyptians. He does not want his family merely to have food, merely to have wealth. And so he says, tell them, emphasize to them that you are shepherds, so that they don't send you to a place where there are other Egyptians. Because if you go to a place where there are other Egyptians, they will expect you to worship the gods of Egypt. And then we will have saved your earthly life, but your spiritual life will be at risk. Rather, tell them that you are shepherds, so that they say, go to Goshen, where we stay far away because we do not want to be with the sheep. We abhor shepherds. For whatever reason, in their religion and in their culture, they did not like shepherds. And so Joseph is so wise that in addition to protecting the physical life of his family, he is also able to protect their spiritual heritage. He is also able to protect their faith. And we see Joseph, who treats his brothers and his father with love. He treats his brothers with love who persecuted him. He treats his father with love who missed him, but who put him in an awkward spot so many years before by choosing him as a favorite. And so Joseph shows us how to forgive and how to love. And for Jacob, he experiences the resurrection, just as his father Abraham, or his grandfather Abraham, experienced it, where he thought that he would lose his son Isaac, but at the last minute, his son Isaac is given back to him. So we see, as with Isaac, so also with Joseph, this idea of a promised resurrection, this idea that something that we thought was lost would come back to us abundantly. And so we see in this story of Joseph this promise of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, that it would not be God's chosen person who would lose a son. Rather, it would be God himself who would lose a son and bring him back to life. It is an amazing story for us to see God's original relationship from Adam through to Noah, to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to the 12 sons, to see how God brought them He gave them a promised land. He gave Noah a land of plenty. He brought Abraham into Canaan, where they would have an abundance. And he brings his children, his descendants of Abraham, to Egypt, where they will have an abundance. But in the future, he will have to bring them from Egypt, where they are satisfied with the things of this world, to the promised land, which we will see in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and finally the book of Joshua. We see God's plan unfold for us, and that all of this plan is is in part a shadow of the future plan, which is salvation by Jesus Christ to bring us not to an earthly promised land, but to heaven, to bring us to God himself.